If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again.
Hey, I'm Madeline Butini, the host of 1-800-MAD-BUTT. I'm a visual artist from Australia on a conversational journey to call up and talk with the best artists, entrepreneurs, and visionaries of our time. Join myself and my guests as we unravel the stories behind their breathtaking creations and groundbreaking businesses. Make sure to check out our Instagram for extra show notes. You can view it at 1-800-MAD-BUTT. All right, cool. Let's get into it. Hey, Phoebe, how are you going?
Hey, Maddie, I'm so good. How are you, lovely?
I'm really well, thank you. So just to preface this conversation, we did just find out that we both went to the same state school together in primary school.
Yes, there's dozens of us. We walk among you.
Which
Millie
is
State
like,
School.
totally, which is just like, I mean, that's made my absolute day. Do you know, I'm going to go around to people now and be like, you know, I went to primary school with Phoebe Paradise. That's going to be
Little
my claim
Phoebe
to fame.
Sheehy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It makes me very
Literally.
happy. Brisbane is like the smallest city in the world. I was at an event last night, and literally the person that I went to this like networking thing with ran into someone that she also went to high school with that was just completely unassociated with her line of work. It's just, you can't throw a rock in any direction without running into someone that you know or was once intimately connected with at one point in your life. It's
Totally.
yeah. Everyone's a celebrity in Brisbane.
No, so I work in the child protection space part-time, and we were hosting it's Youth Week this week. We were hosting a Youth Week event at a splatter room and getting like the kids to come in and let their energies out.
Awesome.
And the lady there was like, we were just like talking. She's like, I was like, oh yeah, I do art outside of work. And she's like, oh, what's your Instagram? And I was like, oh, it's MAD-BUTT. She's like, oh, shut up, I follow you. And I was like, hey.
That's such a nice feeling. But you're also kind of, when you hear that, you're a little bit afraid. You're like, what do you know?
We had like full-on conversations with each other, but we didn't know what each other looked like.
That's so nice. I do that thing where I like kind of form these parasocial relationships with people online that have no idea who I am. And you'll go to a bar or whatever, and you see them out, and you kind of go to say hi as if there's someone you know, and you're like, I don't know this person. They have no idea who I am. I can't just go say hello to this person. That's crazy. But that said, I do really love when I meet people that I have like online, you know, friendships with, like my customers and clients, and that it is an awfully nice thing as like a total shut-in. When I do go out and meet people from online, it is really nice.
Yeah, or if you've had a meeting with someone or several meetings with somebody online over like a really long time, and then you finally have a face-to-face and you're like, I didn't realize you were that tall or that short.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. It is really nice. And in this same way, it's very lovely to finally put a grown-up face to the name as well on this little Zoom call.
You too, and covered in tattoos though. So
I love it. The tattoos are amazing. I feel like such a clean skin. I've got a few tattoos, but I just like, it's never the first thing I think of to spend my money on. You can see my partner Murdoch is a tattoo artist, and I have not taken advantage of it whatsoever. I need to. He'd give me free tattoos as well. I just like, where's the time?
If I was dating a tattoo artist, do you know that I would just be like, I am your canvas. You don't need anybody else. Like,
and I do this thing where every time he does a flash sheet, I'm like, that one, I want that one, and I want that one, and I want that one. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And then I just don't find the time for it. It's just ridiculous. This is the problem with the work-life balance, non-existent work-life balance.
Yeah. What's his Instagram if people want to go and see his work?
Please, it's at Murdoch Stafford. It's Murdoch, Murdoch Stafford. He is absolutely amazing, and he's at Simple Studios in Paddington.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Wait, I'm just gonna have a quick little.
Yeah, please have a squiz.
Scroll.
He's literally one room away from me right now, working on some flash for their flash day.
Cute.
Love his
I
stuff.
love his stuff.
It's
Oh, his
really
stuff's
sick.
awesome.
Isn't it? I know. I'm so
I
glad to
love
hear
it.
that.
Well, as I am covered in black and grey, it's very much my thing. And
I
like
mean,
that
why fuck with the
neo-traditional.
classics, you know? It's a great vibe. It looks
Exactly.
good. Yeah.
Also, it's the most cost effective because you don't have to get the color redone.
Also true. Very accurate.
All right, so let's jump in, Phoebes. Do you
Yes,
mind if I call you Phoebes? Oh my God,
please
sorry.
do. Oh my God, I love it when people call me Phoebes.
Yes. I feel like with as like I'm back being a child again. You've brought up my child mode. You know what I mean?
I'm glad to hear it. Me too.
So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Phoebe. Most people know me as Phoebe Paradise. I am an artist, a visual artist. I do a lot of illustrations. In the last few years, I've done kind of branched out into some like public artworks, into some murals, doing some exhibited work in contemporary art spaces as well. And most recently, I've opened up an art studio in South Brisbane, which I'm very excited about, called Merivale Studios. And we're so close as of today. We have one more space to fill, which is really nice. So yeah, very happy about that.
That's amazing. And I've got
Yeah.
that's the little nugget for the end of our conversation. It's the last bit because I kind of want to have it this like a journey of talking about art
Yes.
and then fashion and then going into your new, I guess, beginnings of
Yeah,
like, I guess it's a little bit of curation as well, which is really exciting.
that's right.
So
Totally. God, I just feel like I have this saying where I'm like, I really want to do a couple of things well that rather than lots of things badly, which is actually just the opposite of how I tend to operate because I want to do one of everything. And but this new project, yeah, we'll absolutely get into it. I cannot wait to tell you about it. It's really exciting.
okay, so being a self-taught artist, how did you come into making art?
Yes, well, if funnily enough, tying it to our school years, the the real start for me, like really, really early start, was back in primary school at Milton State School. My parents were so against me participating in religious education classes.
Mine too. I got taken out. Did you get taken out?
I think it might have been you, me, and one other kid who wasn't a Christian, and he was like part of another religion, and so he didn't. His parents weren't doing it, and we had a couple of really insane. I don't know if you remember. Okay, sorry, just to digress very quickly.
It's like
We had this one RE teacher who was with us for one class. I want to say he was like a stand-in RE teacher, and he forced me to stay in there, and he was like dinosaur bones were planted in the ground by Satan to test our thing. People who wear glasses are like flying in the face of God. God wants you to have bad eyesight. Like just saying a lot of out of pocket shit, like really, really ableist, like really homophobic, really insane stuff. Do you remember this
I
guy?
remember that. I brought up and said, but what about Buddhism then? And he said the Buddha wasn't real. And I went home and told my mum, and she took me out of that class.
Yeah, this was a big catalyst, I think, for a lot of kids in our grade. It was like truly, truly shocking. But even before this guy came in, we had the very classic, like, Christian guy with like the Akui guitar, like singing about like, like turning the chair around, flipping his cap backwards and being like, come on, kids, let's rap about Jesus or whatever, That my parents were really against that. And so what you kind of got to do instead of religious education was just sit and do independent study. And what I instead did was just sit and draw for that like 1 hour of the day or however long it was. We'll just sit and draw. And early on in primary school, this was like the first arts business that I ever had was I would draw Pokemon and sell them to other kids for like lunch money at the tuck shop instead. And I just like I got such a great sense of self-worth from it. I loved having quiet time. I was a big like indoor kid. Like I loved being inside. My brother, who's a year older than me, and I were like best mates, and we just sit with like a big roll of butcher's paper laid out and just draw and draw for hours. And so I loved doing it, even when I wasn't particularly, talented or good at it, let's say, but I really enjoyed it. And then over the years, like through high school, art just, permeated. It was the thing that I loved the most. But I definitely, we grew up in that era of, Gen X and boomers kind of going, there's no work, this isn't a real job, like you really can't kind of rely on this for work. And so I didn't go into uni after high school to study art because I'd really tricked myself into believing that there was just no point in doing it. Having that sort of like, my parents were incredibly supportive of my art, but they definitely were like, it just seems like a weird way to spend your money, like go into debt for this uni course, whatever. And so I just went and entered the workforce as soon as I finished high school. So I worked at a university that actually taught graphic design, animation, and games design. When I was 17, I worked at Quantum College in SAE. Did that for a couple of years, realized that there was nothing else that I wanted to do. So I started uni, like I did a TAFE course at RMIT doing visual arts, and I loved it, but she wasn't there. I just couldn't finish it. I did 12 months. I loved it, but I just, talking about the adult ADHD struggles, my friend, like it was a time. And so I didn't finish the TAFE course, but that was around the time that I started playing in bands. And so I sort of pivoted away from visual arts into music and was, hanging out with a lot of like punk bands, and like a lot of my friends were in music. And so what happened was, instead of giving myself a traditional education, I instead kind of went down this really DIY route of doing t-shirt designs for bands, like shitty punk flyers, like just drawing and painting. Like, I was drinking a lot, I was partying a lot. It was by no means a careerist sort of move. It was just, here's something fun I can do. And then over the course of a few years, like I've been playing in bands for a while, been doing the odd merch design, I decided to start taking it relatively seriously. And I was like trying to get paid for it rather than just getting paid in a 6-pack of beers.
Yeah.
And then that's how I sort of moved into fashion, which I guess is where a lot of people sort of discovered my work, was from the quote unquote fashion label Phoebe Paradise, which I still struggle to call a fashion label because it was very like, DIY kind of dodgy little business, but it was fun for what it's worth.
It looked so cool.
Thank
I
you.
was in my weird agoraphobia stage when you had it around, but I always knew it was there, and I never went in to visit because I was just like, oh, I'm going through this shit and I don't want to leave the house. And I always wish that I came, honestly.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Honestly, I totally understand. Like, it was a flash in a pan. It was only there, like the shop itself was only there for 2 years. So it was like a very short
Only 2
period.
years, sorry. That's
Just 2 years. It felt, I mean, it went by in a flash, truly, but it was maybe one of the most fun and also terrifying periods of my life, but mostly really, really fun. It was the Wild West. Like, nobody should have been given a shop lease less than I was, like, was prepared for it. But it was, it was an absolute gas. And then, after the fashion label, we can get into it a little bit. I really, during COVID, kind of pivoted further into visual arts and trying to take my practice seriously as a, exhibiting artist. And then, God, we've really just blown over about 20 years worth of that's great.
No, it's good. It's a good little tip into what we're going to get into.
Context.
So, yeah, it's good. So, talking about like the business side of things, did you feel overwhelmed when trying to make money to help sustain your art practice? And what were some of the takeaways that you had from that?
Such a good question. I think for me, making money from the arts practice wasn't overwhelming because it's how I kind of started it. Everyone that I knew that was doing art as a job, everyone was in markets. So people doing markets all the time, like a lot of DIY markets, like Black Bear Lodge used to have markets on weekends where you'd just like sell some zines. I think people forget how little you had to earn to get by back in the day. Like, back when I was like in my early 20s, like I was incredibly broke. Like I was working 3 days a week at a call center. I had like very random odd jobs that I was doing around the traps. And so whenever I'd make money from my art, I was like, hell yeah, this is like beer money. And that was really exciting. It was an incredible motivator. But I guess like the pivot from it being that sort of fun early career stuff into trying to turn it into more of a sustainable career that like has some sort of, yeah, like I guess sustainability and viability is something that I'm still grappling with today, I guess. And most practicing artists I know are still grappling with. Like it was tricky trying to teach myself how to be better at managing a business when I first started out. I did the niece program. Did you do
I've
you
done that.
you did the niece program too?
I did
Oh my
this
gosh.
program. Stop
That's
it. Yes.
amazing. I did it back in the day when you had 12 months. So so I was on Centrelink whilst also doing band stuff and doing like crappy part-time jobs and the niece program. So for those of you who don't know, you're on Centrelink, you're not able to find work, they go, hey, would you instead like a free education? We'll teach you like how to run a small business. We'll help kind of facilitate the birth of whatever this
You make
business is
like
going to
a
be.
business plan and then you get mentored and you get other accesses. So when I did it, I ended up getting a Westpac account that I pay no fees on and I'll never have to
Yes.
pay fees on. So I love
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Did you like the niece program? Did you enjoy it?
I did. I really liked it. And I'm actually redoing my business plan at the moment because it's been a while since I've done it. So
Yeah,
it's been great.
nice.
And I'm still friends with the guy who mentored me. And, he calls me and he checks up on me and
Oh my gosh, that's
cheers me on.
incredible.
Yeah, I did
It's
it like 5 years ago. It was so good.
Yeah, gosh, I think I'm getting close to 10 years since I did the niece program. It's like a million years ago. But I think that really helped me to sort of switch focus and really critically think about what it is that I actually wanted to do about pricing my business, about like pricing my products, that is, and setting up an e-commerce website, like just that kind of stuff was really interesting. And because I'd had a lot of experience working in admin before I started moving into the arts business, I kind of knew how to do a lot of this stuff already. I already was kind of like into spreadsheets, which is like a deeply uncool thing to say. Yeah, I just like really love getting my hands on a cool spreadsheet, bro.
Dude, I love a good spreadsheet. So I'm not hating on you on that, okay?
Thank you, Maddie. I appreciate that.
Trust,
Um,
I love a good equation in a spreadsheet too. Like if it
that's
just
right.
works it out for me.
We love automations, seamless automations. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Because I'm not great at math, and so I love when I can just like build a program to do it for me. It's really nice. But yeah, so I guess like that was a big turning point for me doing that. And so around the time I decided to kind of start making my own stuff. So I'd been doing designs for bands for a little bit. I was like, man, if these punk bands can afford to like print 25 t-shirts of like a single color screen print, like why can't I do it? Like save up a couple of $100, do a little print run, see what happens. And it ended up doing really well. I sold out really quickly and I was like, damn, this is the most money I've had in a really long time. And so that really just motivated the growth of the business. I didn't realize that it was something I could do until I sort of took the leap. And then from there, it really was just an organic growth into the fashion label. I was doing t-shirts and then I started working with fashion designers on getting some garments produced, collaborating with people that knew a lot more than me on how to make this stuff and just building the brand. It was a really fun time.
Amazing. So how has the punk music scene influenced your art?
I think visually it's influenced. I think like the visual aesthetic of gig posters, of screen printing, of risograph printing, of like the lo-fi DIY aesthetic has really forged what my visual identity is as an illustrator and an artist. Also, I guess really focusing on merch and like designing my illustrations really start from merch. And so, rather than experimenting with lots and lots of color early on in my practice, I was really trying to stick to 3 colors max because, the more colors you introduce, the more expensive the prints become. That was really a big part of it. But also, I guess, because the punk scene really influenced the art that I make because those were my clients. So, doing work for bands a lot of the time for pubs, for venues, and then for festivals as well. So like, random, like not all punk, but just music festivals in general, bars and venues that had gigs. Like I just became like a regular client of theirs. And that's how my freelancing career kind of started, and running concurrently alongside the fashion label too. It was yeah, God, it feels like ancient history now, but I'm so grateful for that work early on. Like even working for like Triple Z, they were one of my first clients. They got me to design a t-shirt for them like 9-10 years ago now. They just did a reprint of it, which was really lovely. And yeah, just trying to, I guess, fit that aesthetic. It felt really natural coming from where I'd come from. And now it's really nice to see how it's kind of grown and developed over the years too.
Yeah, that's cute. And I bet you would have learned a lot about like contracts during that time as well. Did you get anybody to sign licensing contracts or anything?
I'm going to be honest with you, Maddie, absolutely not. Contracts for me are a relatively new thing as in terms of like the last 6 or 7 years. Like in those
Yeah.
early days, it was really a deal done on a promise and a handshake. I think Brisbane is such a small town. You can't get away with being a dick here.
Yeah.
People talk to one another. And so, if you've got a client that screws you over, or if you've got, an artist that runs out on a job or whatever, like it's not an easy place to be a bad actor. It's not an easy city to consistently screw people over. And so in those early years, especially, it was all very DIY, very analog kind of business dealings. So yeah, very few contracts early on, but I was always, I guess, a little more organized in other ways, just making sure that I was tracking everything in the emails and just keeping up. Like communication was a huge part of these early stages, and just like learning the language of how when clients say they want something, realizing what they actually mean when
Yeah.
they're asking for certain kind of illustrations. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I think because I had a little bit of a different experience to yours. Mine was more because I was mentored by an ex-boyfriend in New York and he was an artist there. So I was getting a lot of contracts in like or interest of work in like America and the UK.
Yeah.
So being in Australia, I had to have a contract, if that makes sense. And so he would
Yes.
mentor me and be like, this is what you need to have, this is what it needs to say, this is what it means.
I love that.
And then, but it was so weird though, because I was like, but I don't really feel like an artist. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just a chick who also works in retail, but, I mean, it certainly did help in the future when I had to get a lawyer to help me with an issue. And I was like, this is the contract that we signed. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, that's such a good way to do it. Look, honestly, when I was starting out, I wish I had someone like that. I mean, my mom has been an incredible mentor to me. She is an amazing businesswoman, like very, very smart person. But I think I had always resented, like, I'd come from this really corporate world, and there was something really nice about the community of arts and music in this area in those early stages, where it there was this sense of fear early on that if you gave someone a contract or if you asked for too much, that maybe it would scare off clients or it would seem too formal or something. It was just kind of like, I don't know, like it didn't gel with that particular community. But I wish that I had in some cases for sure. Like, you know, when you do artwork for a band that was destined for a t-shirt and maybe they end up using it for a bunch of other merchandise or whatever, you know, there's you know, you don't have a contract that's you know, stipulating that you should get paid for extra edits after a certain period of, you know,
Or
confirmation.
reprints or
Yeah,
anything
or
like that.
reprints, that kind of thing. I'm definitely
Yeah.
a lot more on top of that stuff these days, very, very on top of that stuff. But early on in the piece, it just wasn't how my brain worked. I'm a bit of a rube, Maddie.
What does that mean? I've never heard that.
Rube is in like I'm an easy target, you know. I just like
Oh, okay, yeah.
when someone tells me something, I just believe them. Do you know what I mean?
No, totally. No, but also like thinking about it, like the punk scene's very much like about loyalty and stuff. And I think
Mm-hmm.
also about respect and being honorable. So I could understand why you would be like, you know, a promise and
Yeah,
a handshake rather
that's
than,
right.
hey, here's
And
his
it's
contract, sign it now. Like,
exactly, and it's also crucially very low stakes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you know, no one's like, you know, we're not doing like $1,000 deals. Back in these days, I was doing designs for like beer or for free tickets or for like $100. Do you know what I mean? Like this is, and I would never recommend anyone, you know, do that early on in the piece. People should be pricing themselves a lot better than I did when I was younger. But you just, when you're young and excited about getting into a new world, you just kind of like, I just want to make stuff, you know, and it's an
yeah,
exciting time of your career. So yeah, but they're all good lessons as well.
yeah. No, definitely.
Australia is not a hyper litigious culture, right? Like we don't have the same kind of suing culture that America does because it's a very small community. Like the ceiling in Australia is below the ocean. Like we've got a very low ceiling for like, you know, high, like, you know, large,
Yeah.
well-paid projects and that. And it's always frustrated me when you're put into these positions where you're like, damn, I really should have a contract for this or whatever, because you just shouldn't have to in a lot of these jobs that are like aren't highly paid. It's like an email is an agreement, right? Like lawyers told me this very recently. Like, you know, if you have an agreement with someone over email, that can stand up in court as, you know, a contract in some way, you know, for what it's worth. But like it pains me to think about how many low stakes jobs require a level of oversight that should really just be something that's easily worked out between two people. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just being a this is where I'm a boomer.
No,
I'm like, you should
totally.
just give them a firm handshake and then that's a deal, mate. You know?
No, totally. We all know now that the festival scene in Australia is starting to take a hit from the cost of living. Being that you've worked with some heavy hitters such as Laneway and Splendid in the Grass, have you seen a shift to more local venues needing your services over festivals? Or do you just not work within like the music industry like at all anymore?
No, that's such a good question. Well, look, I mean, oh God, the news about Splendor is really sad. I know it's a very controversial thing that's come up, and I think about all of the jobs that have been lost in that festival falling apart, and you know, for whatever reason it was that it didn't come to be this year is like a real tragedy for people in the arts that are producers that are like working on the big art team. I was lucky enough to work with Splendor for maybe 3 years back in 2018, 2019 time. And it was so much fun. It was so great. I worked with a couple of amazing producers, Jean Scott and Sally McRae, who were on the big art team. And we just had an absolute blast. We were just making such cool stuff. We were just getting out there every day, just painting murals and building things. And it was just a real delight and a really amazing experience to be working with your hands out in this incredible space. And I I don't know what the future holds for the festivals. I guess like this general idea in society of something being too big to fail, maybe that doesn't really exist anymore. Maybe the too big to fail after COVID maybe big things can fail. I know it's possible. I think that we're seeing a lot more of a push towards smaller niche festivals that really fall into more genre categories. So like, Splendor, which has always been this really huge deal in Australia, like it's our big festival for international artists. If that's failing, but then you'll see like the metal festivals that happen like at the RNA showgrounds, and they are sold out within minutes. The side shows are sold out within minutes. Like these festivals are still happening, but maybe just not at the huge, large scale where you've got artists that are trying to please everyone. Maybe it's more of a shift towards these niche festivals that are, serving people's kind of smaller interests, or like, more genre-based interests. But yeah, no, to answer your other question, I haven't really done much working with bands and venues in the last couple of years. Like I've really kind of taken a step back from freelancing because I've been doing a lot more kind of large scale projects and stuff that has just taken up my time, which I miss terribly. Like I love doing the freelancing jobs, but it's just hard to do all of those different things, but also I guess like, when you are working in different industries for a long time, like the budgets just aren't there, and it's really tough. Like I think for bands to be able to afford to pay artists what they deserve, it's hard for artists to ask for what they deserve when they're doing work for bands. Like I think it's a tricky industry to get in, and I know a lot of artists that are doing amazing things, like lots of great gig posters for local bands, as well as the really enormous traveling to international touring bands. And I think there's still this really big fight for getting paid a decent or any amount of money for a gig poster or for merchandise or for anything. Like it's the money just isn't really there, and it's a tricky, it's a tricky one. Like it wasn't a conscious decision for me to kind of pull away from that scene. I think it was just an organic one,
Yeah, they don't really pay that much. I've only done like a handful. And then anytime anybody hits me up, they're like, "Oh, I give you $150." And I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
it's
sorry.
exactly. And it's like, it's totally okay. Like, bands, I understand they really struggle, like when, a band is playing a gig at a large venue and the venue's taking what, like 40% of their merch sales. It's a tricky thing for a band to be able to make a profit on t-shirt sales if they're also paying an artist like $1,500 to do that design. So, only really the super big bands that are doing amazingly well and doing international tours and stuff can really afford it. And the smaller local bands really need to pull from their community or underpay people to make their merch happen, which is like, yeah, it's a sad fact of it, I think.
Actually, so I want to tell you a story, right?
Please.
I did a cover for this one band, and then it was sick. It was awesome. Whatever. It's like one of the first jobs I ever got. Then like a couple years later, they said, "Hey, can you do a job for us?" And it was like very not much money, and I was just like, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had just released this one collage. They literally made the same collage and used that as their
Fuck
thing,
off,
the
dude.
cover. And I was just like, how did you not think I was going to see that? Like,
the flagrancy. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Maddie.
no,
That's
all right.
Pricks.
I mean, again, it was a man, but like, who did it? But
I mean, of course.
No. If anybody hasn't gathered yet, I am a feminist, so I do hang shit on men.
No, of course. But it is like you've been storyboarded, as mood boarded, dude. Like the number of times that I've had a client send me someone else's work on a mood board, or if my work has been sent to people for a mood board for someone else that I know that is getting a job, like it's like, if you're sending me someone else's artwork as a mood board, you shouldn't be employing me, you should be employing them. And, like if you don't say yes to a job especially now with like AI kind of taking over and everything, like it's hard to be competitive, you know. It's a sad thing, but it also doesn't surprise me that that's happened to you. It's happened to a few buddies of mine where you're like, you say no to something and then they're like, yeah, no worries, well, we'll just trace your artwork, or we'll just like not pay you and use your artwork anyway, or whatever.
Oh, it's wild. It's so wild. That's so interesting, that mood boarding. I've never heard about it like that.
Has it happened to you before? Like a client has sent you like a mood board with like another like local artist maybe that has like, like it's also doing stuff in your space, like
Yeah, I like generally when I talk with clients, I'll say, hey, can you send me some of my previous work that you like?
yeah,
Because I was getting that whole like mood boarding thing.
yeah.
But like they had this one client in the UK who wanted me to do this specific style of collage, and I just don't do that. And then when, they ended up using the work that I gave them, but like some of the feedback was like, but it doesn't look like this person's artwork. And I'm like, use
Of
them then.
course it
Like,
doesn't.
this is my brain and how I operate. Like, it's, like it's,
I know,
I
it's
can't.
crazy. Yeah, you're like, I'm not going to completely alter my arts practice to fit this. It's tricky. Like, I think it's a really good shift to make when you're starting out. Because a lot of clients will send you a mood board if you're freelancing illustration or any kind of work for them. And a really big shift for me happened when I started explicitly asking for clients to send me examples of my work. So rather than inspiration from Pinterest, or, like they can send me what kind of motifs they want, but specifically send me what of my work you really want. So we're setting the expectations really clear early on. So, you know that this is the rendering style that you're going to get. These are the color palettes you're going to get. Like changing that really changes the relationship with the client, because I think a lot of the time clients don't really have a fully formed idea of what they actually want. They don't know what they don't want until you start submitting stuff as well. Like they might not have the language to, be able to explain exactly what they like about your work or whatever. So getting them to send you examples of your work is like a really great way to skip a few steps, I think.
Yeah. And if they say, oh, I don't know what I want, then be like, send me examples of my work of what you like. So then I know what you
Yes,
want.
exactly.
Because a lot of people say, I don't know what I want, just do whatever you want. And you're like, you don't know what's going on in my brain today creatively.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. And it sucks because, if you've got a client saying just do whatever, that can sometimes be a real blessing, because it's like, great, wow, you really trust me to do my thing. And like, there's going to be a little oversight. That's a really exciting collaboration. But so much of the time when a client says, oh, you just do whatever, it's all good, that to me often is kind of a bit of a red flag, because it means they don't have a fully formed idea of the brief, and the brief is what dictates the outcome. If they don't have an idea of what they want, it's probably because they don't actually know, and you're going to have a Frankenstein's monster of revisions by the end of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
terrifying.
make it explicitly known how much per edit is.
Yeah, I'm still pretty bad at that, I've got to say. I'm like, nah, like after a certain point, I think like I tend to, and I don't do that much freelancing anymore, to be clear. So like I do a lot of other kinds of projects, but client work isn't a huge part of my practice anymore. But on occasion when I do, and I've had really, really great clients recently, and I think it's because I've changed the way that I interact with clients. It's not so much that clients are bad, but I'm just getting better at communicating how to get a job done as well. Um, but yeah, like I think making sure that the brief is really set clear, and in those stages when you're looking to charge for edits and stuff, I have a really clear outline of at what stage I'd start charging for edits. So it's really like, if I'm doing an illustration, in the early stages where you're presenting sketches, like I'll do maybe 3 phases of sketches, 3, like, up to the phase of like basically rendering. anything after that rendering point is classified as an edit in those late stages that really need to be charged for. But before then, I'm happy to just kind of play around. But my friend Sam, who's an incredible illustrator, gave me a really good piece of advice, which was just the sketches that you send them, like in the sketch stage of an illustration, just basically have it done, because people that aren't creative, that maybe don't have the visual language of an illustrator or someone that does design for a living, they can't read between the lines all the time. So you've really got to show them something that's very close to finished, because if it's that at that point, then the expectations are really set. Am I making sense? Sorry,
You
I'm just
are
like
making
rambling.
sense.
Yeah.
No. So like when I do my edits, or how I communicate with my clients, is that they get 2 free edits, and every edit after that is a certain amount, depending on like the scale of the work. So generally I'll knock it out of the park the first time, and that's like 89% of the time. But then I'll have that one client who's like wants like 4 or 5 different edits, because they don't know what they want. And they said, do whatever you want, because they didn't know what they wanted. So I'll generally make the fees quite high. And I have had like a band previously where, and I came across this really tricky situation where I didn't explicitly say who, if the project didn't work out, if they got to keep the artwork or not. And so they had done their 2 edits, and then I said, hey guys, like if you want to do anything more after this, it's X amount. And they were like, oh, well, can we just have it and we'll use it with another artist? And I was like, no. I was like, you need to pay me the full amount for this, because they'd had paid half of the invoice, because you're essentially taking my copyright and giving it to somebody else. And so it became really, really tricky, and they got really upset. Yeah, and to make matters worse, like they were also like somehow connected within my family as like a customer of one of theirs, and so it was really like
that's really awkward and political, like or socially political. I mean, like that's tricky. I mean, like kill fees, I think are really important for people to put into their contracts or their agreements, like in communications early on. Like it's one of the things I've really learned to embrace. Like sometimes a project just won't work out, and that's okay. Like sometimes you'll get to a stalemate with a client, nobody's happy, it's been through so many revisions that nobody likes the outcome, and that's sometimes an unfortunately natural part of these sorts of collaborations. And so having a kill fee in there for when you have to just stop working, but you still need to be paid for the time that you've spent. So whether or not you're doing a 50% deposit up front and then 50% on delivery, like do you just keep that 50% deposit? Everyone's different. But I think
that's like what I do, because it keeps it the most basic, and then people know what they're going in for,
It's simple that way, absolutely. But then also you're right, like I think one thing people don't really think about is just usage of work. This is something that photographers are really across, graphic designers are really across. Illustrators and artists really struggle with usage as a concept, I think, when delivering artworks for clients. And so, making sure you've got this clear outline of in what context is your artwork allowed to be used in. Is it just merchandise, or is it allowed to also be used for social media? Is it allowed to be used for their album cover? Is it allowed to be, and at what length of time is this allowed to be recycled, and can they edit it, and can they crop it? And if you do deliver this half finished thing like you're describing, do they own it? And the answer is no, of course not. But it's obvious that, like sometimes you do really need to state these things. And it comes back to what we were talking about before. You sort of go like, Jesus Christ, isn't this obvious? Like, isn't this something we would all have agreed upon as a society? But sometimes you really do just need to write it down,
I honestly had never had anybody, because I'd never really had anybody not want to finish a project with me. So I'd never really crossed that bridge. I mean, I'd obviously heard about it, but like the project was going so well, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, I actually want to use someone else, and I was just like, the fuck,
Crazy.
like.
Crazy.
I don't even know what the band's name is to even ask, to even check. You know what I mean? No, like I could go through my emails and check, but like I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my God. I would, well, find out and tell me later afterwards. I mean,
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's sad because, when you have those client breakdowns, like I have a great amount of empathy for everyone involved in these processes, because a lot of the time, like, if you're working with smaller bands or a local business, like a small business or something, there's a certain level of assumed knowledge when it comes to these sorts of collaborations. And so, I've got a bunch of assumptions about how I work, what my best practices are, that kind of thing. But that isn't something that, necessarily a band gives a shit about or knows about or would have any context for. So it's all just like new. And so, yeah, like having those agreements laid out just saves everyone a whole lot of time. Just saying that stuff early on. Yeah, gosh.
I need to employ a lawyer to write up new contracts for me, and I'm like dreading the time that I have to do it because I know it's just going to be so expensive.
And exhaustive as well. Yeah. Hey, Law Depot is not so bad. Nava is actually an amazing resource for young artists as well. Like if you want to learn about, not you, because I know you're across this many.
I get Nava's emails, so I love Nava.
Yes, I've got their insurance. They're amazing. Like,
nice.
I think it's incredible to have a resource in Australia like that has such exhaustive information on licensing, exhibiting, freelancing, everything that you need to know as a practicing artist. You can really just hardcore Google that through them and yeah, get into it. It's a really good baseline for pricing as well, which is nice.
Yeah. Did you agree with their price that they said that the average artist is? I can't remember what it is.
Oh God, I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it was like $35 an hour or something. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. I think that hourly rates are a bit of hourly rates are tricky. I don't love working with an hourly rate. I think it can be a tricky way to price yourself because, like, okay, think about it this way. If I work really fast and I'm able to produce something really quickly, an hourly rate penalizes me. Do you know what I mean? Like if I'm able to produce something in 6 hours that a client's really happy with, should I just be paid for the 6 hours that I'm working for it? I much prefer working with a project fee because so much of the time, and not to say I'm actually that fast at working, I'm not these days, but like a project fee acknowledges the fact that a job of that nature is actually spread out over a period of time that is actually unquantifiable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's over emails, it's over phone calls, it's revisions, it's, the back and forth, it's testing and failing and testing and succeeding. I don't think that an hourly rate is a really effective way to price your work. But that's just me. Obviously, that's not how everyone likes to work, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, see, generally I look at the people who are contacting me. Like I had a person contact me. This is when I said no to a job, right? They contacted me. They were owned by a really big skateboarding company and they wanted to release a skateboard. And I looked at their website to see what they sold their skateboards as in their other artist collaborations. And then I made up numbers in my head, like maybe they do like 100 run of this, or maybe, 100,000 run or a $50,000 run. And I took away a 2% fee from myself.
Yeah.
And it was something like $20,000. And they were like, no, I'll give you $1,000. And I was like, no. I know you guys. Well, the profits on this business that they were owned by was like $3 billion. So I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's no transparency around how much they produce either. Like, they couldn't tell me how many that they would make. And I was just like, what the fuck?
I know. I think it can be really tricky working, especially with corporate clients, on the opaqueness of their business dealings. Like, you don't get to see where the profits are going, so it's really hard to price it. It's something I still really struggle with, to be honest. Like, I've got, my average, like, I know what the smallest amount is that I'd be willing to be paid for a certain kind of project. I know what seems like a reasonable amount for varying sizes of businesses, but like, you're still really shooting in the dark so much of the time. And when you're pricing, for a project, like, it's this kind of like standoff of like, what's your budget? What's your fee? What's your budget? What's your fee? And this like really embarrassing back and forth of just trying to work out like, what is actually the like right amount of money for me to ask for this? Because sometimes you ask for the right amount and it just scares them off. But at least if you ask for what you should be paid, you really just kind of scare off the time wasters. Do you know what I mean? People that will end up being shit clients in the first place.
Yeah. I had this one lady reach out being like, oh, I want a podcast cover. And I was like, $5,000. And she was like, I can't afford that. And I was like, too bad, I can't be bothered doing it. Like,
and it's a nice feeling being able to do that sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just like, fuck it, I don't want to work this week or this month. Like,
yes, I love that. Oh God,
but amazing. I have the liberty of having like a job that I have a salary and like I get to pick and choose who I want to work with. But when I was hustling, it was like whatever I could get, I would take.
Of course, yeah. Look, I mean, I understand there's an immense amount of privilege as an artist to be able to say no to jobs, right? Like, that's an obvious part of it. But I do think, there is a turning point in your career at some point where you can kind of identify red flags in a client. And if they are immediately unwilling to pay a certain amount for a project of a certain scale, then it's a pretty good indication of whether or not they're going to fuck you around over the course of that job as well.
Yeah, so, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, there's
you just all great advice.
Like, I feel like, it's whenever I talk about how I price stuff or how I do any kind of freelancing, like, I really hesitate to share information about it because I also don't want it to seem like there's a hard and fast rule for how you should be doing this stuff, because everyone works differently. The way that I work may not be the best way for everyone. It might even not be the best way for me either. And I do think, people should be hesitant to follow the advice of any one artist because, I mean, everyone's got a different working style. So I definitely don't have like the answers to that stuff. So I just need to clarify that as well. Like, I am far from perfect in the way that I do these things, but every time I do a new job, I learn something new, and that is priceless, truly.
No, totally, Phoebes. And I love the fact that you're so transparent about it as well, because we're all human and we all fuck up. And I think on social media there is like a really large kind of like weird facade of being like, I'm perfect, I can do this right, I can do that right, everything I do is right and correct. And it's like, actually, you look into the background of it. I mean, looking into the background of me, right? So I posted this thing being like, I made $1,000 sale. Fucking great. Yeah. I took that sale to the fucking post office. Guess how much the postage was to America?
Oh, how much?
$450. So
fuck you, America. Fuck you, America.
Yes. So I really only made, because I ended up using that money for other things as well, I only made about like $10 off that.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's it. Well, it's like when someone tells you they win big at the pokies, and it's like, yeah, sure, but how much did you put in?
Yeah.
Like, they always tell you how much they won, not how many coins they put in. You know what I mean?
Exactly, right? And so it's so interesting looking at that one story about that, the $1,000 sale, right? You'd think I'd been in art for 9 years. I'd had an online store for like 7 of those years, went off, decided to open up my online store, didn't do my due diligence, fucked up, and learnt really hard.
Yeah.
That I need to like price things accordingly in my web store, whatever. Anyway.
Oh my God.
But I'm human and I fucked up and it's fine, right? I just laughed
Yes.
about it at the time.
Totally. And that's
You know,
such a good lesson. And, I think that, and that like social media is all bullshit thing, like young artists should be super wary of personalities online that act as if they have all the answers. Do you know what I mean? That are giving all of the advice, like this is the hard and fast rule for whatever, because there really isn't, and maybe shouldn't be a hard and fast rule. Maybe for some things, but not for best business practices, not for everything, because it really is a case by case basis. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean when you have, I think there's maybe a perception of me that I'm like, rolling in cash because I've done like a few big collaborations or a few large public art projects. But for every like, $40,000 project that might come across my table, 39,000 of that goes into the fabrication of like the artwork or whatever. And then you walk away and you're like, wait, how did that happen? Like I thought this was going to be a huge payday, and then this is just the way that it goes. Everything's expensive. I get it,
dude. So you know what, like I wasn't really taking on work over like the last 3 years, like only work that could like help supplement my income and whatever. And I did some workshops up in Mackay, up at their regional gallery up there, but they were paying me $150 an hour, right, for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Dude, I spent that money and bought a new bed because I was like, that is the true investment.
That's my luxury, baby.
My bed before that was like dipping in and it was so bad.
Oh man, I love that
shit like
so
that,
much.
you know what I mean?
That's real living, dude. I like do you want to know my real idea of luxury? Is during COVID, so I just closed the shop in the Valley and was having a really weird time after that. I was not sure what I was going to do with my life or anything. And I got a job. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to get a day job and just like take the pressure off of selling stuff, making stuff. I'm just going to take a break from art for a little bit. And I got a job at a hairdresser. And I was like, this is the right thing to do. I'm like being so reasonable. This is just like a job at a hairdresser. Like I was a receptionist. I wasn't cutting hair. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make a bit of cash. And like, you know what? I'm being so like conservative and smart about this, whatever. This is like the sure thing. COVID happened. Immediately lost my job.
Yeah.
As soon as COVID happened, and then went straight back into art during COVID. But the one thing that happened from getting that job was that I started using really nice shampoo because they had all of the pumps there, and so we could take away little sample pots and stuff. And ever since I started working there, I now spend like an insane amount of money on just like really nice shampoo and conditioner. And this is for me just the peak of luxury. Whenever I get like a really good payday, I'm like, we're getting the shampoo, we're back, we're getting the nice hair stuff.
You do have really nice hair, so
thank you. It's definitely looking a little crispy tonight, but
it looks great. And you have great skin too.
Oh my gosh, thank you. You will be happy to hear I am on finally the end of my Roaccutane journey.
Stop it. Did your nose shrink?
Oh, really? Is that what happened?
Have you heard about like people's nose shrinking on Roaccutane? Or
no.
How do you say it? Yeah, it's all over TikTok. Have a look.
Oh my God. Oh, a free nose job. My goodness. No, I had really like intense cystic acne. I had a breakup, and then just like when I was like 27, just got insane cystic acne, and I didn't do anything about it for a couple of years because I'd always had troubling skin. Like I'd always have breakouts and quite crazy skin. I started Roaccutane, and it has been maybe like 2 years I've been on it, and I'm finally coming off of it now. And
Amazing.
I'm like, oh, It feels really nice. I can finally step out into the sun again. I have been a vampire for 2 years. I'm very excited
I mean,
about
you're
it.
an artist, so you've basically been indoors anyway.
It truly has not impacted my day-to-day life in any way.
But
I
now
am a
you can do more
goblin.
murals outdoors, so it's
That's
like,
right, exactly.
you
Well,
know.
yeah, one of the positives of Roaccutane is that it forced me to start being a sunscreen girly, which, I think we should all be, but it really
Mhm.
forced my hand, which is good.
Yeah, you got to slip, slop, slap
I mean,
all day.
indeed. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. All
Mm,
right, let's move on to fashion. So
mm.
tell us about Paradise and creating textiles. How was that for you? So before you were saying you were working with all these different people. I've never done anything in textiles, so I have no idea about this kind of stuff.
Oh
So
man.
what was it like?
It was incredible. So Phoebe Paradise, like the label, Paradise the label, um, really came to be. This is a project that started immediately after the Nice program that I finished in 2013. And then I started moving into textiles. So I started working with a buddy of mine, Vanessa. So I'd been selling t-shirts for a while, and I knew nothing about fashion, didn't know how to sew. I really wanted to make garments, make some fun, ready to wear dresses and that kind of thing using my prints, but I had no education, no knowledge of how to do it. And so I really just leaned on buddies. So I did collaborations with a friend of mine, Vanessa, who was a fashion graduate that was able to design some um, patterns for me for some of the dresses. I designed some textiles for it, and then we worked together to put them to print. And I worked with another amazing designer, Anna, who we were kind of collaborators, I guess, for the first couple of years of the business, where I was subcontracting her to assist me in building up the brand. So she had been working for a couple of really big fashion labels. She was in Sydney for a while, and she was really supporting me through that process. But God, I mean, it was an amazing, fun job, but also really scary. Like creating garments and selling high quantities of stock is expensive, man. It's really expensive. And the profit margins are not great either. If you want to make stuff in Australia, if you're, doing all of your production locally, it's the profit margins aren't amazing. If you're also not sewing your own stuff. And so I always wanted to keep the prices of my stock really affordable. I don't think anything ever went over like 150, 180 bucks. But I was lucky, like the brand took off really well. I had a really dedicated customer base locally, really just across Australia. And as I started, I got to explore different kinds of garments, a lot of different collaborations. It was just crazy. And when the business was at its peak, so I had my online store where I was selling most of the garments. I'd done a couple of pop-ups. So I did one at Junkie Comics. Junkie Comics and I went down to Melbourne. We did a pop-up and did enormously well in that pop-up. And then I was like, sheer hubris, might I add. I was like, you know what? How hard could it fucking be? Maybe I'll just open up a shop and just like see what happens. And you've got to understand this was pre-COVID era. There was a lot of cool, like small boutique shops opening up. And I had gone on a hunt for various commercial properties around the valley. Like I really wanted to open up in the valley where my people were. And I found this space in Wynn Lane, or on Ann Street originally, that was run by Arthur Apostolos, who owns a bunch of properties in that area. And he had a relatively affordable space that was a short-term lease. It was for 2 years. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do it. And so we got the lease for the space, opened it up. I say we because I actually opened it up with my best friend, who's also called Phoebe. We opened it up. She was managing the store for me while I was working behind the scenes, and we were working there every day. And she was my first like real employee. And the store was crazy. Like we sold lots of stuff, we made lots of stuff, but it wasn't just a retail store. We'd also have gigs, we had exhibitions, we had pop-ups within the space. We were just doing so much in there. And it was, I keep saying it's the Wild West because I barely remember those years. We were partying so much. We were really just having a fat old time in that store.
I mean, you were in the valley, so
it was, yeah,
you know,
it was pretty special. It was a really special time. Like I look back on it so fondly. It was, working with these other creatives that had other really fun stores in the area. Like having bands, like friends of mine from Melbourne and Sydney come visit, and they do like a show like on the floor of the shop on like a Sunday afternoon. We'd like, sell beers illegally and just like, just dick around. It was just a really fun time. But, over that period, I think the online store was doing really well. The shop was doing really well, but I actually encountered this problem that I didn't consider. And this is because I really just didn't have the acumen for it. The problem was, if you're doing too well, you can't grow easily without a ton more investment capital. So what we'd find was we'd make new stock, we'd sell out of it, but the lead times for production were around 3 to 6 months. And so a lot of the time I'd run out of stock and the shelves would end up being empty and I couldn't like manage the cash flow. And because we were producing locally, but it would still take a long time to produce stock, if we were doing well, it would actually kind of harm the business. Do you know what I mean? It was really stressful. I mean, obviously, like it was expensive. There were a lot of unforeseen expenses as well, but it was a really good lesson, I guess, in learning what kind of business I wanted to have. And so there was a tipping point when I had the shop and things were going really well. And there was a decision that I had to make, which was, am I willing and ready to start producing overseas? Am I willing to start scaling up and employing more employees? Am I, if I need to grow this business, I can no longer be the person that does all of the designs, that is the face of the business, that runs the social media, that does all of that stuff. I'd have to take a step back from the day-to-day functionality of it to go more into the back end. And I wasn't ready to scale it. I just couldn't do it. It was a really scary step. And, ironically, I'm really glad that I ended up kind of scaling back. So when the 2-year lease was up, I didn't renew and decided to take a step back. Like I sold off all of my stock in a sale, and ended up going back to just living my regular life, starting that job at the hairdresser, like I was telling you. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Like within like 3 months of me closing my shop, COVID happened. And so all of the existential dread that I was going through, like, did I make this terrible decision? Like, have I fucked up? Like, is my life over? Have I like fucked my career? Whatever. It all kind of got overshadowed by a global pandemic. So I didn't really have time to think about it because I was like, oh, well, I guess maybe there's bigger things, and like my like small weird time, kind of trying to work out what this business is going to be actually doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and I can just kind of go back to basics in a way. It was it was
like
great.
Perfect timing, to be honest.
It truly couldn't have been better timing. Like obviously it was a terrible time, but also
it was the shittest time ever.
Of course.
I hated COVID. It was bad, but that was amazing that that you closed before it all happened. Yeah.
Yes, and I felt so terribly for my friends and colleagues that still had stores open during then as well. So they've really obviously suffered really heavily from
Don't feel bad about
disappearing. Oh, I mean, it's just I empathize and sympathize for.
But see, like I have a friend who's a photographer who's like in $90,000 worth of debt because of the floods. Then there's the whole COVID thing, but I just try to as much as I can just to like get him to do shit. You know what I mean? For me, and like you know, or I try to pass them along to other people, because
Yeah.
I understand you can feel really, really bad, but it's also like, not my circus, not my monkeys. Like I can't, you know.
Totally. Oh, look, I mean, when the shop closed and COVID exploded, it was definitely a great time for introspection, a great time for some serious heavy drinking. And and also, weirdly, like talking about that blessing in disguise, like a lot of friends in this creative world, like actually ended up making more over the COVID period than they would have without it. It really just like the world stopped. And so people, who weren't working, like a lot of my friends lost their jobs during COVID, instead really just fueled all of their energy, all of their passion just back into making stuff as well. So, and myself included, like it really, after the shop, cannot stress enough how close I was just to like quitting. Like I was just going to throw in the towel, and I was like ready for just like a day job and just kind of putting it all behind me for a while, at least. Like I don't know for how long, but the plan was to kind of just take a break. And then COVID sort of, I don't know, had other plans, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. So
Yeah.
if you could do the store again, what would you do?
Mm. Um, to be honest, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I love brick and mortar shops. I think they're so important. I love the community aspect of it. Like I have no regrets about it. Like I'm so glad that I did in exactly the time frame that I did. But if you would ask me today whether or not I would go back and start another one, the answer is no. Like I think that pop-ups are really amazing. Working with boutiques that sell garments, a range of different labels, like those communities are really strong, and more importantly, they're much more viable as well. Like I think it's, going back to the hubris, it's too much to expect a business that's on such a small scale, even if it's doing well as a small business, to sell just the one thing. And so like having a boutique that sells lots of different labels, I think it's just much more financially viable to do it. So like that I could totally see happening. But yeah, I don't know. I think the landscape for retail has changed so much in the last, even 5 years, 6
Years.
years.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much more competition. It's slow fashion labels can still do incredibly well, and it's been a long time since I've been in those spaces, but I do see friends of mine that are doing enormously well in those spaces. But online retail is really, if you're profit driven, online retail is the best in my, from what I've seen anyway,
Yeah.
the best way to do it. But no, to answer your question, I guess hypothetically, what I would do differently if I was to reopen Food Paradise as a boutique, I think would be to not just sell my own stuff, but to use it as a platform to uplift other brands around me. So, not trying to make it this small universe, but actually use it to showcase other local brands as well, and just be amongst it, not being an
Yeah.
island, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. That's kind of like what happened with this podcast, because originally it started in COVID. Then I had like
Yeah.
some personal shit go on, ended up like scrapping all of the stuff that I had previously done. And then, like what you said, I was like, oh, I don't really want to be an island. Like, I want to uplift other people. I went for a
Yeah.
job interview. I'm going to blur out where I went. And they said, if you want
Ah.
to join our team, you need to get rid of your podcast. And I was like,
Wow.
what?
Wow.
I
Interesting.
know.
Huh. Wow. Is it like an
Yeah.
optics thing? Like, did they have a reason for it? What was the like, or was it just
I
like an
shut
ultimatum?
that down. I shut down that really quickly. Like, I was like, no, sorry.
That's so
This,
fascinating.
like, I was just like, you clearly don't understand what I'm
Oh,
doing. But
God.
anyway,
The workforce terrifies me. Like the idea of having to like delete, my digital footprint in order to re-enter the workforce is just like, it's just never gonna happen, bro. Like I don't,
oh,
there's nothing I can do.
dude, all I was going for was a graphic design role. Like, it wasn't
Wow.
even like,
That's
yeah.
crazy. Really crazy. I thought they would have loved
I
it.
know.
Like,
I know. And I even said to them, like, I was like, look, I'm not going to poach any of the artists that you have. I was like, to be fair, like, I don't generally like the artists that you guys have. Like, my vibe is a lot different to yours. You know what I mean?
I love that. That's really funny. The more you know, huh? That's incredible.
Yeah. But like, for sure, they're intimidated by me, like, you know. So
speaking your truth on the internet, I guess. My God.
So what does Vivienne Westwood mean to you, Phoebes?
Oh my gosh. Well, more recently, Vivienne Westwood to me means working with the Stitchery Collective for the amazing Veil Vivi project that we did last year. God, that was amazing. So for those of you who don't know, last year, around this, actually, gosh, this year is it her birthday again? Wait, has it
I
been
don't
a
know.
year since we put it on? Where is it? Oh my gosh, yes. So it was her birthday yesterday. Gosh, how did I miss
Stop
that?
it.
Yeah. So last year, myself and the Stitchery Collective teamed up to put on Veil Vivi, which was a Vivienne Westwood birthday party at the Tivoli, and it was such an amazing project. We had live performers, we had bands, we had a group art show that was really just celebrating the birth, life, and death of this incredible artist and fashion designer who really just, I don't know, set the tone for fashion like in a way like no one else has. And you know, her ties to the punk scene, her ties to music, like really obviously is quite inspirational to me as a designer and as an artist. And it just felt like a really great alignment to produce something with that amazing team and just have a big party, basically.
I love this. So
Yeah,
good.
are you a Vivienne Westwood fan?
I am. I love Vivienne
Beautiful.
Westwood. I was going through one of my old like collage books that I used to do when I was like, like collage journaling, because I used to get like old magazines or Rush magazines back in the day when I was
Beautiful,
like
love
a
it.
teenager. And I'd like collage in there and do like collage journals. And I found one the other day and it was like Vivienne Westwood, and it was like all about her. And I was just like, oh, I love Vivienne Westwood.
So fab. Best teeth in the game.
Totally. And
Yes.
also, I love that she just had this like real, like kind of like what you were saying before, like this pivot, and just kind of became her own and like really like worked into like, I guess, focused on her like strengths while also going through so many challenges, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I also just respect the fact that she stayed true to her political beliefs right till the end as well. You know, like I think it's so easy well, not easy, but it seems like, you know, when you get to a certain level of notoriety, when you're doing corporate collaborations, you know, you'll see people kind of smooth off their hard edges a little bit, you know, about their political beliefs. And Vivienne Westwood just right till the end was just, you know, really acting as a voice for the voiceless in a way that's just really quite inspiring. So yeah, Veil Vivi.
No, I love it.
Veil
Okay.
Vivi.
So we're going to move on now. Tell us about your new studio.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to tell you about this, Maddie. So, Merivale Studios is the new studio that I've opened up in South Brisbane. And it is this beautiful 400 square meter old warehouse, like an industrial warehouse that's been converted into 16 artist spaces. So we've got these shipping containers that came with the building. We're very excited about those. They're all like air conditioned. We've got some mezzanine floor studios that are really affordable. So if you want to have more of a hot desk vibe, and a couple of really large floor studios for painters or large project artists. And I opened this up, God, I got the keys back in November, and it has been a real journey of just fit out, of like putting myself into director mode,
I love it how
really
you
just
say
pushing
no more
myself.
brick and mortar, but this is sounding very much like a brick and mortar.
That's a very good point. But look, I think retail and like an arts business are quite different beasts, you know. So we're
Yeah.
the studio isn't relying on foot traffic and the general public to survive for viability. So each of the artists and residents that are in the studio are signed on for a 12-month contract. So we're looking for long-term tenants that are looking to really invest in the space, make it their home, and be a part of the community. You know, and committing to the space in that way. I've got 15 residents now who are all incredibly cool creatives from like a varied background of creative practices. So we've got muralists, we've got traditional painters, we've got illustrators, we've got a couple of creative businesses as well, writers, photographers. It's an incredible group of artists, and I'm so proud to be able to work with them and provide the space for them. It's been, yeah, it's truly just been such a joy. And you know, one of the fun parts about this studio is that we've got, so the artist studio, the building's divided in two. So the back half of the studio is all of their spaces, but then the front half of the studio is kind of like a multi-use space that's, you know, they use it for lunches, it's hot desks and that, but can be transformed if they want to use it for exhibitions. And so each of the tenants receive a free use of that space during their residency. And very recently, one of the residents, Makami, who's an incredible fine art and fashion photographer, transformed it into a gallery for her first ever solo exhibition, which was marvelous. She's such a talented artist, and it was just a great event. It was the first event that we did, a bit of a soft open. And yeah, it was just great. The community response has been incredible. I just feel so fortunate to have this space to share with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I was talking to Liv the other day, and
Liv, yes. Oh, we
yeah,
love Liv.
yes, and they were telling me how they got a new studio space, and I'd obviously already done some pre-research on you, my dear. And she was like, I'm in this studio space. I love it so much. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell Phoebes.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. Liv is an
Yeah.
absolute legend. So Liv, whose pseudonym or creative practice is Atomic X. So
And
Liv
she's
is a
actually been on this podcast.
Oh, have they? That's
Mm.
amazing.
Mm.
Liv, you know, has incredible practice, and, you know, obviously does amazing photography and events, and has their own fine art practice as well. They're studying. And I think Liv is a great example of why these kinds of studios should exist in Brisbane. Like, this is someone that has a really great established practice in Brisbane, but needs a space to work, you know, somewhere that fits all of the criteria, where they can have all of their expensive equipment, they feel secure leaving it there, that they've got, you know, an air-conditioned space so their gear and their paper won't get destroyed in the crazy Brisbane humidity in summer.
Yeah.
You know, and then also have a community of like-minded artists to work with and collaborate with, like in an incubation space like that. It's, yeah, I feel so fortunate to have Liv with us. Their practice is amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. And also there will be like links down to all of your things down here.
Yes,
So there'll be
please.
like to your website, Instagram, and then I think the Instagram for this, I can't say, is it Merivale? I always feel
Merivale.
like
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it wrong.
no, that's okay. It's just like the street, Merivale Street. Yeah, Merivale
I know, but
Studios.
you know, I don't know.
No,
I've got
it's
dyslexia,
okay.
so I'm always like, am I gonna say this wrong?
I
I'll
understand.
link that down there too.
Thank
So
you so much. Well, you know, while we're not open to the public, you know, in day-to-day life, because we're very close to being fully tenanted. So I've been like on the blitz just advertising spaces, but we're very close to filling up. But if people do want to book the studio for events, workshops, exhibitions, like, they're most welcome to reach out for that. Also offering, we've got like a photo studio there and a podcast studio as well, maybe of interest to you. But we do have these other facilities that are bookable to the general public. So if you are interested in kind of coming to visit the space whilst being a closed business, you can always reach out to me for that stuff too.
Yeah, nice. And obviously go to the exhibitions because
Yes. Oh yeah, and come to the parties as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the interview now. So tell us what's coming up for you in 2024 and beyond.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin, Maddie. It's like it's a crazy, crazy year. I have obviously this studio is my baby. We've got a whole bunch of amazing events coming up. There's a couple of really fun activations that I can't announce just yet, but keep an eye out on the Mervale Studios Instagram. I also have a solo show coming up at Hervey Bay Regional Gallery, which I'm super, super excited about.
When's that?
It's happening, oh gosh, I think it might be September. I need to get the actual dates for it. But I'll be up there re-exhibiting my work that was in Botanica last year. So the houses on stilts, the big sculpture, that's going to be moved up there. Absolutely beautiful gallery. The curators, the whole team are incredible. I also have, oh gosh, what else is coming up this year? There's a bunch of stuff that are in like the stages of, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to talk about it yet, but some really cool stuff coming up. A couple of really great collaborations with a brand that I've been working on for last month, which is really cool. Getting actually back into textiles, which is something I never thought was going to happen again. So that very exciting for me. But yeah, really, you'll just find me at the studio working away. I'm just loving having the opportunity to do, I guess what really qualifies as like the least amount of self-promotion I've done in a long time, where I'm really just working with these other artists' incredible practices and trying to uplift them through the studio, provide opportunities for them using the network and using the studio itself. Yeah, it's a fun time.
I love that. You are like the most beautiful human being.
Stop it! No, you too. What do you got going on? What's upcoming for Maddie Bettini?
I just got asked to do. I started making a notebook the other day when I was drunk.
Oh my god, the screen is a little pixelated, but that looks beautiful.
Yeah, sorry. I think I need to get a new computer, so that's what's coming up for me this year. No, but I have a friend down in Sydney who wants me to do some stuff for a restaurant down there in that style. But like apart from that, I just have like my podcast and just working on stuff. I was thinking about doing a solo exhibition, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the energy.
I know a place, you know.
Thanks.
Right? I know a place.
Yeah, like look, I mean, I'm just rounding out on the last couple of years, so I'm like slowly easing my way back into it. Like I'm doing my business plan and things again.
Great.
You know, so it's just like
you're just
playing
working,
around.
Man. I love it. That's fantastic. I mean, doing great things and running a fabulous podcast as well. It's it's awesome to see.
Thanks. So do you have anything else you'd like to say or add in before we round out?
Honestly, I think we've covered so much. My voice is actually dying because I feel like I've just been ranting at you for like the last 2 hours. But I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and just talking bulk shit about the minutiae of freelancing and all of it. It's just, it's been such a gas, Maddie. Thank you for having me.
No worries. You're welcome. No, thank you for coming on, Phoebe. And it's so funny we went to school together. And like,
I know.
That is going to be what I'm saying to everyone now.
We have to dig up a photo. There has to be a photo of us together from primary school years at some point, like in one of the like grade 6 like photos of us as children somewhere. It's got to be there, I'm sure of it.
I know. I need to find it. I have actually old school camp photos. So.
Oh my god, amazing.
This episode was recorded on Yuggera and Turrbal land. Sovereignty was never ceded. The episode was produced by myself, Madeline Bettini. And if you would like to support 1-800-MAD-BUTT, you can head to my website, madbutt.com.au, or you can also go to our Instagram and follow us there. Of course, we appreciate any reviews, so please leave us one if you love it. And yeah, hope to see you again. Thank you.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again.